WVTC Radio Detroit. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, our website, www.wvtcradio.com, or download our WVTC app from the Play Store for Android users and the App Store for iPhone users. Thank you for tuning to WVTC Radio Detroit and the Community Bell Show with your host, former Wayne County Commissioner, Edna Bell. Stay tuned for insightful information Detroiters will find valuable. Text a friend and tell them to watch with you for news you can use. And now, your host, Edna Bell.
Please unmute.
Hello, hello, hello. I bet you saw my mouth working and you didn't see any words coming out. That's because I forgot to unmute. Oh, again, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this wonderful Monday afternoon. The Community Bell Show is here to provide information to you that you probably won't get anywhere else on any other show, but you will get it here. And thank you for joining us. We've got two wonderful guests today. As you already know, second Monday of the month is Housing and Real Estate Month. And we've got two guys who are very, 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 very knowledgeable on those subjects. So, first of all, we have Mr. Fred Durrell, who is with the Michigan State Housing Association. Fred, how are you?
I'm
Just
fine. How are you
unmute
today?
yourself. I'm
I'm fine.
great.
How are
I'm
you today?
great. And we also have with us Ken Scott, who is a real estate person extraordinaire with Scott Handler and Wallace Real Estate Company. And we're going to talk about housing for everybody, but in particular for those folk who have never bought a house before, first time home owners, and those who want to get involved in the housing market. Fred, introduce yourself to everyone.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Fred Durhall. I am the community liaison for the Michigan State Housing Development Authority. I've served as a former state representative as well for Michigan's Fifth House District, and I'm just glad to be here today to talk to you about housing.
Welcome. We are so glad to have you. And in a moment, I'm sure Ken Scott is going to show his handsome face, and we'll talk to him about real estate and housing also. But tell us just what you do, Fred, with the Michigan State Housing Association.
So one of the things I do with the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, otherwise known as MISTA, is as the community liaison, reach out to our community. I am part of MISTA's outreach team, and through our outreach team, we work to provide and disseminate the information and programs that MISTA has to the community here and throughout the state of Michigan. And so as we talk about housing, particularly here in the state of Michigan, MISTA is focused by a few guiding principles. One of our first guiding principles, obviously, is people first. We want to ensure that we respect our citizens and that we listen and exchange information to them. Another principle that we live by, obviously, is diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is huge, obviously, as it relates to housing, particularly sometimes in inner cities across the state and across America, for that matter. We also have great decision making. We try to pride ourselves on that and use reliable data to ensure that our information is evidence based and fiscally sound to support the mission that we have. And finally, we partner. So partner collaboration is one of our biggest principles as well, because we understand not only to disseminate and get this information to the public, we've got to partner with other banks and other financial institutions to ensure that we can provide affordable housing for the citizens across our state.
Give us some examples, Fred, of how you partner and how that benefits Mary Jones who wants to buy a house for the first time.
Right. So as far as the partnerships as it relates to our outreach team, we hold a housing resource fair. We generally hold our housing resource fairs quarterly. And in our housing resource fairs, one of the things that we do, and the reason why we decided to call it a housing resource fair, is because we understand there are other elements that are related to housing that is important. So during our housing resource fairs, we used to have them in person. Obviously, COVID has changed everyone's lives across our country, and we went to a virtual event. So when we used to have folks at tables that would provide resources, maybe from Huntington Bank, or we'd have folks even from doctors' offices or dentist offices that were providing free services to our citizens, or DTE providing energy efficiency tips for residents across the state. We actually switched over to virtual, and so now we have those partners on our virtual housing resource fairs, and they basically do give presentations and give folks access to their products and their information. So as we partner for housing and close the gap, we use those tools such as our virtual housing resource fair, such as mailings, such as events, to be able to show our strength and partnership to provide the aspects of affordable housing and affordable housing in general.
How have those virtual resource fairs gone? I mean, do you get a lot of participation in those?
I'm glad you asked, so I can brag about us a little bit. So
Okay.
when we first started, and we made the transition, we were a little bit worried, right? We were the outreach team of MISTA, and we were like, how are we going to reach the citizens, and we can't be around them, right? We can't see them face to
Yes,
face. We
yes.
can't talk. We can't gather their thoughts and help solve their problems, face to
And
face.
how do you even
And
that the fair's going to come up? Yeah. How do you
so,
get the
so we
information to them that the fair's going to happen?
Right. So, I mean, and I'll tell you, it took meetings, but we developed just a strategic plan. So I'll give you an example. Our first virtual housing resource fair was done last November. And it took us about 2 to 3 months to plan. And we kind of did some tests before then, just on smaller events with some of our partners to kind of gather what the platform would be. Should we use Zoom? Should we use Teams? Should we use some of these other virtual platforms? And obviously, we decided to use Zoom. So our first virtual housing resource fair, we had over 1,600 folks on the call,
Great.
and which is
Wow.
amazing, as you can imagine.
Yes.
And so it was just amazing. We were able to have folks from our eviction diversion program at the time talk about eviction prevention. We had folks from our neighborhood enhancement program to talk about how they could gain access and community groups can gain access to grants dollars so they can help fix their communities. We had our home ownership department on that talked about our Mr. First K loan, where if you're a first time home buyer, you can qualify up to $10,000 on your first home. And we had that information on there. And then we had other partners who were like 501c3s and nonprofits come on and talk about what they do to help with a lot of housing solutions across the state. And so it was just a huge hit. And then the second event that we just had one this past March, and that was our faith-based housing resource fair. First time MISTA has kind of done, or any state department, really a faith-based theme event. And we partnered with the governor's office of religion or ecumenical services. Deion Williams is over there. Their faith-based initiative that the governor's office has. We partner with them over there. And we had close to 1,700 folks on the call. So it just keeps increasing. It's becoming popular, and we're able to provide these resources. So I had to brag a little bit about that.
And absolutely deserve to be able to do that. Now, tell me, what was the difference between the faith-based one and the regular one? What elements are different between those two?
So the elements that were different, I think we had over 11 pastors and reverends on the call who actually had the ability to kind of speak, not necessarily, in a religious, obviously there's quote unquote a separation between a religion and state, as folks say. But they were able to reach out to their folks, to their clergy, to their parishioners, and bring them on to the call. And we were able to reach folks that we generally had not reached before. It was actually just amazing. The different, it was very diverse. Whether it was Kojic, whether it was Baptist, it was just a lot of diversity in there. And it worked very, very well. 1,700 folks on the call.
That's incredible.
They were able to get access and get their questions answered. And for the very first time, this one was a little bit different. We implemented something that we hadn't done before. We try to be respectful of everyone's time, but when the call ended, our dedicated staff stayed on an additional 30 to 45 minutes to make sure everybody that was on the call had their question answered as it related to housing, or we were able to provide them with a resource where we could contact them later.
Wow, that's incredible. That is absolutely amazing. And I guess it just speaks to how determined and how concerned and how people are about owning their own home. That you have that many people on call. That's just absolutely incredible. What kind of questions were you able to answer for them?
Well, as you can imagine, first of all, sometimes when people think about MISTA or HUD for that matter, they think about Section 8. And so there obviously a shortage of vouchers. There's a long waiting list as it relates to Section 8. So some folks want to get off Section 8 and they want to learn how they can get into the process of earning or owning their first home. And so we always
before you leave that, let me stop you. Some people listening don't know what Section 8 means. Tell them what Section 8 is.
So Section 8 is a low income program. And it's a federal program, obviously through HUD, but they provide it through state housing agencies to ensure that folks they can get into homes. And so when you hear about like low income housing or, some of these low income housing projects, those are Section 8. So you can apply for a Section 8 voucher And these vouchers are able to follow you, in your state, and sometimes even, around America, depending if it's what they call a sticky voucher that sticks to you basically when you move even to
Mhm.
another state, and if you qualify, it will allow you to have the ability to have affordable housing through the government, and it's low cost. It's not, high rent, and so some folks that are on Section 8, they want to learn how to own their own home. So we have a keys to home ownership program that if you are on Section 8, we will provide you with a down payment assistance loan, $7,500 or more, so you can get into your home and get your home for the first time. You mentioned a lot of folks want to become homeowners, and so we know at Misha that the ability to do that, to have the ability to do that, we've got to provide a path, and we try to provide paths to home ownership to ensure everybody has a fresh start and everybody is able to get in those homes. So another aspect that we use that I failed to mention, we also have credit repair programs that we have in our housing resource fairs, because a lot of folks want to be able to own their first homes or qualify for these loans. And so what we do is we partner with nonprofit organizations who help folks fix their credit, but we just don't give them advice and credit counseling for one day. These programs follow them until they're able to own their first home. So
Oh,
it's
wow.
just it's
Now,
just
once
amazing.
they,
Mhm.
that's amazing. So once they get the down payment, and are there some qualifications they have to meet to get that down payment from Mr.?
Sure, there are some qualifications to meet. To run through them on the show would be, very, very. It would take a while, and everybody obviously has specific qualifications or criteria. But what I'll do before I leave, I'll be sure to provide you our website, where folks can
Okay.
go right on there and they can see the criteria. They can see all the programs as it relates to the down payment assistance program, so they have the ability to apply and possibly get in their first homes.
That is wonderful. Now, back with the Section 8, once they are in their own home, do they still get that same amount of money each month from the Section 8 program, or do they have to provide that for themselves?
So once you're off Section 8, you don't get the voucher anymore to be able to pay your rent. But that's one of the reasons we, do this program. We have in this program, on the road to getting our Mr. loan, or so you can own your first home. We also teach like housing classes, housing education classes, to ensure that when you get in your first home, you're able to sustain it. You're able to pay your mortgage. You're able to keep your home up. And so these housing educational programs are essential to ensure that homeowners not only get in a home, but they have the ability to stay in a home and build financial know-how, financial literacy, and even possibly financial wealth for the future for them. So you don't get the voucher obviously when you own your own home, because the vouchers are for folks who don't have the ability, that need a little bit of assistance to be able to get into a home.
Okay, that is great. Now, is part of the training they get, does it include being a good neighbor? Like, you got to cut your grass, you need to paint your house when it needs to be painted, you
So we talk
need to
about
not
the
let the kids and the dogs
yeah.
run all over.
Yeah, so obviously, we talk about these things. However, we can't force people to do these things, and we don't make it the forefront of our curriculum. But trust me, a lot of our housing counselors, they do, talk about responsible home ownership, because one thing about owning a home, as because you own a home for a while, that your property value is important. And so responsible home
Absolutely.
ownership, when we talk about, we let these folks know how you treat your home will determine the value of your home. And then if you
Yes,
decide to sell one day, then, it's based on, how your home is, the upkeep of your home. So we talk about that. And we also talk about, in a little bit, we talk about neighborhoods.
yes.
I know we talk about homes all the time, but what builds a neighborhood is a collection of homes. And
Mm-hmm.
so strong neighborhoods have strong neighbors and strong homes. And so we try to push that information forward to our citizens and try to push that, or we advocate and try to push that educational component so they have the ability to understand what it really means to be a homeowner and a good neighbor here in the state.
Excellent. And I think it's just so important that people recognize how important their
Yes.
behavior in their community is to making that community safe and
Yeah.
viable, and their property values staying good or going up.
Yes.
It's just it's one of those things that sometimes I don't think we talk about enough. We do concentrate a lot on the finances, of course, but
Yeah.
being a good neighbor is also a big part of making sure your community is a strong, safe, viable community. So that's so important.
Absolutely.
Um, Now, as we talk about Michigan and housing, do you get involved at all with development in communities?
So I mean, obviously, MISTA has development programs. I think sometimes folks kind of mix MISTA up a lot with MEDC, but as far as commercial goes, but MISTA also offers what they call LIHTC, which is low income housing tax credits to folks who are developers and they want to develop housing, housing projects within the state. So those credits are able to be provided to them so they can develop, and there's criteria that they must meet, obviously, to be able to receive these credits as well. So MISTA is on the development side, MISTA is on the home ownership side, on the rental side as well.
Mister's everywhere. We're all
MISTA
over the
is
place.
MISTA is everywhere. MISTA is absolutely
Ooh,
everywhere. So when I provide that website as well, if there are folks who are interested in development, we have information on that as well. But if you
okay.
look at some of the affordable housing units, senior living apartment buildings or whatnot, a lot of folks don't know. A lot of those are MISTA properties. And
Oh,
a lot of those credits have come through MISTA for developers who decided they wanted to, start those developments.
all right. Good news. Good news. Now, as it relates to Mister, what's the relationship Mister has with, let's say, the city of Detroit or Southfield or Redford, any of those places?
So what they call the local, every state, or I'm sorry, every city or municipality, not every, but most have their own housing commission. So Detroit
Uh-huh.
has its own housing commission. So
Mm-hmm.
obviously, when we talk about the flow of funds, and you're very experienced with that as a county commissioner, the funds can flow from feds to the state, and from the state to the county, to the county to
Uh-huh.
the local municipalities, and so the housing commissions in these local municipalities actually have their own autonomy as it relates to how they operate their programs. But obviously, we provide vouchers. But Detroit is a little bit different because Detroit is such a large city that Detroit gets their vouchers from HUD, and they get their vouchers from
Okay.
HUD. So they, we may partner sometimes and deal with each other at times, but the majority of the vouchers that Detroit has comes from the federal government.
Okay. Okay. That's and because Detroit is so different, but what about smaller municipalities? How
Yeah.
do they handle that?
Well, some smaller municipalities also have their own vouchers and their own housing commissions, and there's a set number of vouchers, obviously, that they're able to distribute that become open as the waiting list becomes open, and they have
Uh-huh.
their own issues. One thing that I've learned since I've been in housing, and it's only been a couple years, housing is a very complex subject.
That's true.
And I'm still learning to this day about housing. However, we've got a pretty good grasp on it. But that
Okay.
being said, that a lot of those local municipalities, they have their own issues that they deal with, and they deal with them
Mhm.
in house. And
Okay.
so, a lot of times when we receive calls, if it's a local issue, particularly as it pertains to vouchers, we encourage the citizens of that locality or municipality to contact their local housing commission, or HARA, as we would say, so those folks can get the assistance that they need.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, we're going to take a quick break here and have a little wonderful gospel music, and we're going to be right back, everybody, to hear more from Mr. Fred Durhal, Michigan State Housing Development Authority. Is that it?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So we'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. All right, all right, all right. Mr. Ken Scott,
Hi, how are you all doing?
real estate person extraordinaire.
How
My,
you all
my,
doing?
my. Oh, well, how about that? Glad to have you. And we've been listening to Mr. Fred Durhal from Mr. talk about what Mr. does and how they do it, and these wonderful virtual home ownership programs they've had that had 1,700 people in them. I think that's
Absolutely.
amazing. 16 or
Absolutely.
1,700 people is that's a huge number to be in a virtual call. I can't imagine how you manage that, but that is that's great. That's great.
The answer is very carefully.
Very
Absolutely.
much so. Very much so.
Absolutely. We've got a question from the audience, Mr. Durhal. The question is, once people qualify, what is the interest rate for the loan? Now, is that a loan or a grant from Mishta?
It is a loan.
Is it loan?
Once you qualify. So I'll pull up give me one moment and I'll pull
Okay.
up the exact number because we're actually just pushing through our new home ownership program coming through for the funding that we have right now. And so I want to make sure that I specifically give you the correct rate, the interest rate on the loan. There's the Michigan 10K down payment assistance loan that we have, and I think the interest rate is, one moment, it is on our website. So you qualify up to with this down payment loan. Obviously, a couple of the criteria is, first, there's a home buyer education program, which I mentioned, that you have to take. For first time and repeat home buyers, there's also this Michigan Home Flex Mortgage Loan up to $7,500, and then this loan, from what I'm seeing, the interest rate is not listed on here. So I would have to go back and pull up that information.
Well, if they do it now, from what I've been hearing, interest rates are probably 1 or 2%, which is very, very low.
Correct. The interest rates are very low. But I do want to mention that you got to have a 640 to 660 minimum credit score for multiple section manufactured homes.
Oh, that's important. Everybody hear that? Your credit is what's going to get you to the promised land. Absolutely.
Yes.
Going to get you your new home is your credit score.
Yes, and there's also a sales price limit that I do know that we have to mention, and that is $224,500 statewide. That's the sales price limit for the homes. And then finally, there's
$224,000.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who might be interested.
That may be interested in those homes.
Yes.
And finally, there is a household income limit to apply, and they can vary depending on your family size and property location.
Oh, okay. Very good. That question came from Miss Shirley Johnson. Yeah. Thank you, Miss Johnson.
So that AMI comes into play, Mr. Durhal.
I'm sorry, say that again.
That AMI comes into play?
Yes, I think it's a 30% AMI is what it is.
Well, stop using those acronyms. People don't know what AMI means. What does AMI mean?
Average median income.
Yeah, the average median income is 30%. Yeah. One thing I would tell you about learning housing too, Ms. Bell, is that there is a lot of acronyms.
Yes,
absolutely.
I came from the communications industry, and I know about acronyms.
Right.
So yes, that's why I always caution people. Tell people what these letters mean, because people don't know what all that stuff means.
Right. That's right.
Fred, how long have you been with them?
I'm sorry.
Pardon me?
How long have you been with them?
I've been with Mr. now close. It'll be 2 years in August.
Okay.
And so it's just been a blessing to be there with Mr. Learn a lot about housing, as we're still learning a lot about housing. But just to see how important it is, particularly in our community and the city of Detroit. That's one of the biggest issues in the city.
Absolutely. Ken, talk about housing. What have you got wonderful to talk about this month about housing in the Detroit area?
I mean, well, housing, as it states right now, is in a seller's market. That's good for those individuals that are selling homes. May not be so great for those that are buying homes, but at the same time, it's a competitive market. It's a very competitive market, and the good thing about it is Mr. has a means for individuals to not only secure a mortgage, but also the down payment assistance, and
Yeah.
that's a good thing all the way around.
That is important. Now, there are other places they can get down payment assistance also, aren't there?
Yeah, there are several other entities. Presently, Liberty Bank has some down payment assistance, and then at the same time, there's going to be an opportunity for individuals to get $15,000 from the city pretty much as well pretty soon. So that's going to come into play as well.
Okay.
Did we lose Fred?
I'm
I'm
there. It
here.
is. Okay, so the city is going to have $15,000 also,
Absolutely, absolutely.
and Liberty Bank has 15,000. And those are grants or are those loans?
Those are grants.
Okay, everybody,
Those are grants.
grants. Do
Yeah.
not have to pay back. Hear that?
Yeah.
And,
Grants.
and Ms. Bell, if I may, may answer because I just had my news flash come through. But I believe that the first mortgage loans, their rates are 4.25%, and that's a tax exempt program. And there's also a taxable bond program of 4.95% on first mortgage loans.
Low interest rates.
Okay.
Low. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Ken, what's this? The $15,000 that the city is going to have. Have they announced it yet?
It's a new initiative. It hasn't reached everyone, but at the same time, it will be coming out fairly soon. Keep in mind that there's always been seller concessions as well as other means to achieve that closing cost and what have you. So it depends on who you're working with as a realtor. I mean, whether they're knowledgeable enough. Again, there are areas within the city of Detroit that have the neighborhood enterprise zone that could incentivize individuals to buy within certain communities. There's historical areas that have a certain tax amount, and you can deduct your taxes as far as the home ownership is concerned. But people just need to know about these programs, and I don't think we do enough to educate people, and I don't think they do enough as to find information out as it relates to whether it MISTA, whether it be other entities that need to find out about home ownership and how it can be financed. Because a lot of us are seeking financing. A lot of us are building our credit in order to position ourselves for financing, what have you. But at the same time, that's the reason why we suggest that they go to a HUD certified housing counselor so they can find this information out.
And who is a HUD certified counselor? Do you know any HUD certified counselors?
Well, I happen to be one. I work with neighborhood NID housing counseling in the Detroit Borrower Help Center down on West Grand Boulevard in Woodward.
Okay.
We do classes every fourth Saturday as it relates to home buyer ship and what have you, so we can make sure that they're aware of what the particulars are as far as home ownership and positioning themselves for it.
And how long do those classes last?
They range. We do 4 hours on the fourth Saturday. Then we do a 2-hour orientation as well as 2 hours one-on-one. So, and the individual has to be ready and be able to go through those classes, and at the same time, supply all the intake forms and what have you, the credit reports and what have you, in order to position themselves.
Tell people how to get their credit reports.
Number of ways. You can go directly to the repository.
The easiest way.
Well, let me say it this way: is several ways. Again, you can go through the repositories, Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian directly, or you can go through your housing counselor to get the tri-merge, which is all three again. And one of the things that I always suggest that people go through is annualcreditreport.com. They are offering weekly credit reports from Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion free of charge. so those individuals don't have to get a hard hit on their credit. They can find out what they owe, who they owe it to, and if the information is correct.
Okay. And so, how are you doing in terms of housing right now, in terms of selling houses, houses on the market, people who want to buy houses, people who are capable of buying a house?
We're busy, to say the
Busy is
least.
good.
To say the least.
Busy.
Not only am I working as a real estate broker, but a housing counselor, and then I have a HUD contract to place the homeless, reentry, veterans, and disabled as well. So that's always going to be a balancing act, to say the least.
Wonderful. And one of the things I'd like to for you to start looking at, and I'll introduce you to this young man, is returning citizens in housing.
Absolutely, absolutely. You
Because
and I have had a friend in common. Unfortunately, he died recently.
yeah,
But Vance Gerald of the Travelers Aid
yes,
was a good advocate for individuals that were in those positions. And unfortunately, like I said, he's gone right now. But there are other individuals that fit that need as well.
absolutely. And I've got another young man. His name is Dwight Harris that
Mhm.
will be talking to in the future, who tries to do the same thing for young
Absolutely.
people or people who have
Yes.
been released. And what he works with are those people who have been convicted
Absolutely.
incorrectly. They were
Right.
they were in jail and were not guilty, and they
Absolutely.
come out, and even though they weren't they should not have been in the first place. They come out and they just let them out. They don't have a
Mhm.
place to go.
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
they have to figure out how to get ID, and there's something that we talked about probably a while back, is that it would seem to me that the Department of Corrections knows who they are when they're leaving. They
Mhm.
would have a state ID for them as one of the things they give them when they leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that just makes sense to me.
So,
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's some dropping of the ball there.
Fred,
so
Fred, do you know anything about that?
yeah, so I was gonna say I'm kind of glad you brought up the housing issue because one of the things Misha is working on. This is an initiative that we haven't released yet from our outreach team as of yet. But one of the initiatives that we're working on is returning citizens and housing. One of our next big events, we're going to be dealing with that. We're putting that together right now. We're going to have a special guest for folks when we host that event. But there are right now, folks don't know, the Michigan Department of Corrections and MISTA has already partnered to provide a number of vouchers to returning citizens, Section 8 vouchers to returning citizens upon their release.
Wonderful.
Obviously, there's not a gazillion of vouchers
Sure.
because there's a need outside of folks who are not even returning citizens as it relates
Correct.
to vouchers and the waiting list. However, we started that initiative to help folks who are returning citizens with those vouchers. And one thing our outreach team has done has worked closely with Councilwoman Janae Ayers, who has a returning citizens task force for the citizens of Detroit. And we participated in that task force with her. And they're talking directly about housing. And so
Good.
we're all trying to come together to figure out that issue as it relates to housing for our returning citizens. Because I believe you're right. That's an untold story that folks don't know when they get released. They don't know where to go. Sometimes they can't go back to their family. So where do they go?
Absolutely.
If they're homeless, right? That sometimes exacerbates the problem and increases the chance of recidivism.
A recipe for
Yeah.
disaster.
And it's a recipe for disaster. So I've been very, that's something that's near and dear to my heart because when I was in the state house, I introduced the ban the box bill as it related to unemployment. But I think we've got to work and extend that to housing so we can have fair housing for our returning citizens.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ken, do you have something you'd like to say about Mr. Durham?
Absolutely.
As he was in the state house and he was involved in Ban the Box, and he's working on all these other community initiatives.
Exactly. I've known the Durals for some time. My one of the moments that I really enjoyed was working under Mr. Durhal as it relates to the Terra process as it relates to canvassing and what have you in the neighborhoods and what have you. Um, Fred was my immediate supervisor.
How about that?
And you know what? He gave me a hard time and everything. He made me.
No.
Yeah, I want to call him out and everything, but he made me toe the line and everything. He knew I was a kind of like a rebel without a cause and everything. But he made me toe the line, and then shortly after that, he made the transition to Mishta and what have you. And then I saw him at a home buying seminar over at what was the church? Third New Hope.
Yeah.
Okay.
Third New Hope. And we were working together again to promote home ownership.
In my old district.
Absolutely. So he's always worked in the community, and as I understand it and everything, he has a new aspiration and what have you. And I wish him good luck in that new aspiration.
I knew.
What is it? New aspiration. Don't say what
that
it
new
is.
aspiration is that Mr. Durhall is presently seeking a seat in the city council.
Oh.
Yeah,
I just somehow knew that was going to come up from Ken. So let me be honest, Ms. Bell.
Absolutely.
I didn't work him that hard.
Okay.
But
he sent some people to touch me, and make sure that I was doing it right.
You know what? I'll say this, Ken. And it's funny how things become full circle. We were helping run Mark Schauer at the time, his campaign when he was running for
Gary
governor.
Peters.
And Gary Peters' Senate campaign, and I was very involved as a director over there helping him run that campaign. And so he was one of our good field folks out there. And he learned a little bit about canvassing, and it was a tough program. But I left the Michigan House and went over to Mishta. As you asked about our partners earlier, one untold thing is Ken is one of our partners that we talk about when we talk about the credit counseling. Like, he's participated in many of our housing resource fairs alongside with another guy that I work with by the name of Van Adams, who works for Mishta. And so Ken is a regular at our housing resource fair. He always is able to provide resources to our community. But I knew he was going to bring up the city council race because it's one of the worst kept secrets I got going on right now.
Well, that's a good thing.
I guess so, but I like to take the opportunity to separate it sometimes when you got to talk about Mishta. I keep those things separated, but nevertheless, whatever capacity I'm going to be in, whether it's the city council or working with Mishta, housing is one of the most important aspects, and we just want to get folks in affordable homes. So
yes, it's absolutely essential in our communities and what have you, especially when rentership has gone up to about 60 to 65% in our communities.
Really?
We have to create that black wealth again, and
that's incredible.
I think we've dropped the ball on that because we've gotten a little comfortable with having a little mobility, but at the same time, the equity that we could amass if we were to pay attention to the black wealth in our community would be tremendous.
Oh, incredible. And as you talk about the black wealth that we've lost because of housing being eliminated.
Absolutely.
I'm going to go back to, I guess, last week before last, maybe. My daughter, Alicia, who is a Wayne County commissioner, was invited to participate in the Tulsa, Oklahoma Black Wall Street burning celebration. And she came back with some great information from great books. But that is wealth that was destroyed. Centuries worth of wealth. But when you look at it, every major city in the country has had something very similar happen. I-75 wiped out black wealth in Black Bottom. And the one that people don't think about is what they did for Hamtramck. Because in Hamtramck, instead of going through the white neighborhood, they went around and went through. That's why you see that big curve in I-75. They went around the white community and devastated the black community in Hamtramck. And in one of my other lives, and one that I still have, I sit on the Wayne County Economic Development Authority. We just settled a lawsuit with the federal government and the people up in Hamtramck whose families were devastated by I-75. And we just settled that lawsuit, I want to say maybe 16 or 17 years ago. And so when you see that big curve that I-75 takes as it goes through Hamtramck, it
Yeah,
was going around the white community and devastating the black community as well.
around
And they
the whole
just,
Brook area.
and they sued and they won the lawsuit.
Okay.
So just
And
local information.
what was my Pastor Jordan was instrumental in doing a lot of housing in that respective area as
Yes,
well.
yes, he
He's done
was.
a number of developments.
He was involved in that lawsuit
Absolutely.
that was brought against the federal government housing
Absolutely.
because of how they destroyed that community. And so
Mm.
we've got lots of stories that locally that we can tell that our children probably don't even know about.
True. True.
And so we have a job to share the knowledge,
Yeah.
share the information, the history, so that they understand
Yes.
just somehow
Fred,
how we got to some spaces.
yeah. Fred, I'd like to ask you a question. You all have the keys to ownership, keys to own program that is specifically geared toward those individuals that are presently renting through a housing choice voucher and could really transition from rentership to home ownership. Are you all doing anything to promote the keys to own program? Because I think if I look at it and I look at it as it relates to the city of Detroit, it could create home ownership where there hasn't been any home ownership in a lot of distressed areas, but at the same time, where those homes that could be utilized for the Keys to Own program already meet the guidelines as it relates to the habitability of the homes with the housing quality standards. So, are you all doing anything to promote Keys to Own and make people aware of it? Because when I first found out about it was 3 years ago when I was teaching for Southwest Solutions.
Yeah. So
Southwest Solutions, a lady came to me and brought me the handbook on Keys to Own, and I'm like, "What is this?" And I had never heard of it before, but I understood the value in having it.
right. So we're obviously we're doing our best in regards to disseminate the information for programs like our Keys to Home Ownership program. We there it's always incorporated in our housing resource fairs. One of our directors, who is Mary Townley, is over that. And so she always gives a presentation on our Keys to Home Ownership program. We've also, within the last year, ramped up our advocacy and our educational reach. This is why outreach has taken it to another level, meaning that we are pushing these programs through email. We are pushing these programs through conferences. We are pushing these programs. We just did the BMCC, which is one of the national or the statewide housing
Right.
conferences. We are pushing the Keys to Home Ownership and a lot of our programs through all of that. And so obviously we're looking to extend our reach. The more folks we can get at our events or the more folks we can get on our calls, obviously the better we can get the information out. But we also work with our partners like you. Our valued partners like you help assist us to getting that information out, as well as other HARAs, which are housing agents, housing assistance resource agencies, such as Wayne Metro and other of those, a lot of other nonprofits that assist us with that.
Yeah. Yeah, because I always thought that if that program had been initiated in some of the districts, as specifically in the more distressed areas of the district and what have you, that could have created home ownership to the point where it could have possibly staved off foreclosure and possibly even the bankruptcy if it was instituted properly.
Yeah, I think sometimes too it becomes a gap, and we're working on bridging the gap. To be honest, MISTA has developed, and we're rolling out now a strategic housing plan, statewide housing plan, so we can improve our reach and also improve what we do and get better at what we do. And we'll be sending that. We sent a survey out to over, I think, 30,000 Michiganders or more who responded and talked about some of the things they'd see, wanted to see whether that be from rural areas or back to urban areas in the city of Detroit. I believe one of our focuses right now, though, I know you mentioned the increase in renters. One of our focuses now is called the SARA program, and CERA, and what the SARA program is an eviction diversion program that we are utilizing.
Oh,
A
I'm
lot
glad
of
you mentioned that because
yeah,
I've had people asking about that.
oh
So go
yeah.
ahead. I won't interrupt.
And speaking of acronyms, what does it mean?
So the SARA program, I got to go back and look at the acronym for the SARA program, because we used to call it the EDP program, was the eviction diversion program. But SARA is kind of like it comes from the CARES Act funding,
Right.
and some of that funding that has come from the legislature now that is going to go into helping us reduce eviction rates here in the state of Michigan.
Okay.
Well, that's going to be so important because I think as we come out of the COVID situation,
Mhm.
people are going to be worried about being
Yeah.
evicted now. Are the rules going to change, and what am I going to have to do, and how can I stay in my house?
Yeah, well, you just sparked my mind and reminded me that's what SARA is: COVID emergency relief assistance.
Okay.
And so, yeah, to be honest, when the second funding came in, we changed the name because we exhausted the funds for the EDP program last fall. And so when these new programs come in, they come with so many acronyms, new acronyms.
Right.
But this is for the COVID relief fund. So COVID emergency relief assistance for folks who are facing eviction throughout our state. And we're trying to work with our local partners to get the word out, because these dollars are available and they got to be spent. And so we're doing the best that we can. We're actually trying to even partner with DTE, which I want you guys to keep your eyes on. We're looking at partnering with DTE to kind of help stop this eviction, a lot of the evictions that are going on, particularly in the city of Detroit, which is one of the hardest hit.
Absolutely. Can any of those funds be used for energy bills?
So the COVID, emergency relief assistance program is used just for eviction. If you're facing eviction,
Okay.
but MISTA also partners, with local groups as it relates to energy assistance and paying their utility bills. We try to partner with SER. We try to partner with a lot of these groups to ensure that folks are able to keep their lights on if they have housing too. But that's just not something we specifically do. That's more of a DHHS type of deal. But we still have our our outreach out, and we still try to partner with as many folks as we can.
Wonderful. Well, my goodness, we've run out of time. This went by too fast. There's too much to talk about. Ken, you've got something coming up in July, the first weekend in July?
Absolutely. We are doing a jazz concert on Livernois right next to Mike's Market on Saturday, July 3rd from 4 to 7. The act is Yvette Meadows. She has been doing jazz concerts throughout the area. She's done Arts, Beats, and Eats, Montreux Jazz, what have you. And she's going to adorn our stage on July 3rd from, say, 5 to about 6:37. And it's going to be a nice event. We're inviting all people to come through and just listen to some jazz. Be outside for a change and enjoy the atmosphere. Do some people watching. Do some toe tapping and hand clapping and all that.
Well, we can't have all those people and not provide some information to them. What kind of information are we going to be providing?
Oh, we're going to be providing home ownership information.
All right.
We're going to have the vaccinations there as well. So, and we're hoping to promote some of the businesses along Livernois or the Avenue of Fashion in order to get them up and running as well.
Oh, that's going to be a great time. Gentlemen,
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining me. A lot of information. You're just going to have to come back.
Yes.
You're going to have to come back. The second Monday of every month is Housing and Real Estate Monday. So you'll have to come back and share the new programs when they roll out.
Yes.
That would be wonderful.
Yes, and folks can look at programs really quick at michigan.gov/MISTA. So that's www.michigan.gov/MSHDA.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Seeing you out there.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Let me thank Richard Nichols, who came on and said hello to everybody. Teresa Acton and Shirley Johnson said hello, Mr. Durhall. It's good to see you.
It's good to see her too.
Thank you for listening to Community Bell with your host, former Wayne County Commissioner, Edna Bell. This broadcast was brought to you by WVTC Radio Detroit. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, our website, www.wvtcradio.com, or download our WVTC app from the Play Store for Android users and the App Store for iPhone users. If you've enjoyed this broadcast, tell a friend to tune in. We'll see you next Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern to the Community Bell Show, right here on WVTC Radio Detroit. You're listening to WVTC Gospel Radio Detroit, and we're flowing in the Spirit.